So as we look to the future now, in the last couple minutes we have together here, I want to ask you two questions for the average listener who's listened to us talk for the last half hour or so, and they say, "Okay, love it. We agree with all of it." Small business owner, or maybe a high ranking leader in a company, what should I be doing today that I'm not doing now? I've subscribed to these tools. I've deployed them to my team. I'm asking people to experiment. I'm organizing my data. I'm doing all of the fundamentals. But what should I be thinking about? What questions should I be asking today to prepare my business for the next 6 to 12 months of innovation and opportunity in this space? And maybe to the point of, what do you challenge your clients on when they come to you and they have these digital transformation aspirations? How do you challenge them to ensure they're ready to make the change that they say they're pursuing?
I think you've just nailed it with that very final sentence. I think there's we have to abstract the appetite for AI adoption with the readiness for AI adoption. And regardless of whether you're C-suite in an enterprise organization or you're an entrepreneur in a small medium business, you've got to be looking at your technology estate and understanding, is there actually preparatory work that I need to be doing and time and money that I need to invest here such that we can effectively adopt these tools? Because returning to your point earlier about return on investment, the risk that we run at the moment is people, they invest sums of money in estates, in technology ecosystems that actually aren't themselves ready for the adoption of AI. So I think that has to be an imperative, and that's why we're doing that a lot with companies at the moment. Actually, recognizing that there absolutely is the appetite, but we are able to overlay a technological lens on that and give some real insight into, okay, well, that's the target, but to get to that target state, we're going to have to do these two or three things first. And I think that just comes back to good decision making, prudent investment decision making. Um, yeah, I think that's one of the things that I'd be looking to focus on. The second thing, and I return to the AI guardrails or the AI policy. I think there's very little in terms of legislation that's currently out there, and legislation protect will protect consumers, it will protect technology providers, it will protect professional services entities that operate in that technology environment. At the moment, in the absence of really kind of clearly defined and adopted policy, as in governmental or government legislation, I think being pragmatic about the safe use of AI, I think, is really, really key. I think constantly challenging, do we understand where our data is going? Do we understand how our data is being consumed? What level of risk exposure from a cyber perspective is this placing upon us? How do I ensure that our people are using it in a ethically responsible way? These again are absolute priorities that particularly with regards to the ethical priority. That's not a technological concept. That's still very much the human in the loop. Um, so yeah, those are the things that we really are talking about.
So then my last question for you would be, looking into your crystal ball, looking towards the future. If you were in front of a university class, 21, 22 year olds, they're coming up on graduation, maybe they're going to go to graduate school, and they ask you, what do I need to be prepared for as I get into the professional world? And it's going to look different than anything that we've seen before. And you're in a position that you're advising businesses and you kind of understand where they're going. What are the skills that people should be investing in, irregardless of how everything plays out with AI specifically? But you kind of have a sense of where the technology arc is going and what the valuable human in the loop skill is going to be. What would you be advising those students to be investing in outside of their core studies, maybe in their personal time, to develop into a person that companies will want alongside this technology?
I think again a really interesting question. And before I get to my answer proper, one of the things that we've as an organization have done over the past 10, 11 years is operate what we refer to as academies. So we are professional services IT consultants. Um, traditionally there's been a view that to become a consultant you have to have got a certain level of experience of expertise, and we really wanted to challenge that going back approximately 10 years. And one of the things that we looked at first was, could we take somebody who'd got, for example, a computer science degree, a UK computer science degree, and could we accelerate them through initially then 6 months of hands-on learning, such that rather than it taking a number of years to get the skills and the experience to become a consultant, within 6 months you're doing the job. And we did that. And over the course of the past decade, not only have we refined that down to 3 months typically for people who we can bring in to our organization, but we've done it across software engineering, we've done it across quality assurance, DevOps, project management, indeed, and business analysis. Now, the reason that I say that is because we challenge ourselves constantly to look at, how can we all never stand still, to coin the phrase? How can we all make sure that we're continuing to prioritize time on our own learning? How do we make sure that we're horizon scanning in the right way? That means we've got an awareness of what's coming down the line. Now, the reason I give you that is because we've made the decision to evolve the academies further. So in the start of Q1 2026, we're going to be running two concurrent academies. One of which is a technology academy, where we're going to be bringing people through a 3 month or 3 to 4 month process where we'll be upskilling in all of the technical skills that I mentioned earlier: software engineering, quality assurance, DevOps, so on. And equally, then concurrently, a non-technical academy, which is going to be looking at agile project management, agile project management, business analysis, kind of core consulting skills, product ownership. And the thing that became very clear, or has become very clear over the course of the past 2 to 3 months, as we've designed these academies, is we need to make sure that we're teaching people how to write great prompts. We need to make sure that we're teaching people, how to get the best from AI as it currently stands. If the most simple use case is, I'm going to interact with ChatGPT. I'm going to ask it some questions to help me create some content. Okay, well, how do we do that really effectively? How do we make sure that the human in the loop is driving the AI and the AI is not driving the human? And I think that would be my advice to. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I did find myself stood in front of a group of students, I would feel very deeply for that group of students. But I think I think really prior or really understanding the role and the influence you can play in your interaction with technology, because the technology is not going to stand still. The acceleration is going to be profound from here on out. Even we talk about the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, where we could be in the next 5 years. Right now, the mind really does baffle. So I think, be inquisitive, be exploratory, understand, but really understand. Don't blindly use or adopt technology. Understand firstly what's the why for you using that technology. If you have a why for using it, then explore around it. I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, in some ways, I think that this is it's a complicated moment. I think if you're a young person entering the workforce, but all of our experiences have been that the younger you are, the faster you adapt technology and the more innovation you find in it. And it may actually be the people who've been in the workforce 25 plus years who struggle to adopt as quickly. And so we spend a lot of time worrying about the young folks, and justifiably so, if entry level jobs start to dry up. But this is generally the generation that adopts the fastest, and they may surprise us with how quickly they adapt.
I couldn't agree more fervently. As a father to young children, seeing my children growing up as absolute digital natives, and the speed with which they understand technology, they use technology, it really is quite incredible. So I couldn't agree more strongly. I think you're right. I think the future's in good hands, providing that those hands use technology safely.